People think sometimes that as an entrepreneur, as a founder, you're going to be right all the time and you need to be right all the time. The reality is you're making countless number of mistakes, probably on a daily basis, right? But the key is to just be persistent, to stick through it, stick through the tough times, and just kind of keep hammering. There are three phases to startup timing. You can be too early, you can be early, or you can be too late.
It's clear that slogans don't save companies, products do.
I don't perceive MyFitnessPal as our number one competitor. I actually think of ChatGPT as our number one competitor.
Welcome to this week's episode of L.I.F.T.S. I'm Matthew Januszek, and I'm here with my co-host, Mohammed Iqbal. Mo, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. We're approaching 100 episodes almost. There's been almost 2 years of lifts, and we've got a really special guest on today. Joining us on Lyft, someone who's really been at the intersection of hardware, data, and performance for over a decade. Rami Alhamad has been is a co-founder CEO of Alma, which is an AI-powered nutrition companion that helps people unlock better performance, longevity, and well-being. Recently, Alma launched their app and is already the official nutrition partner for Hyrox America. I can't wait to ask him a bit more about that. Before Alma, Rami co-founded Push, pioneering wearable for measuring strength and power output, which was acquired by Whoop in 2021. He went on to serve as a VP of product at Whoop and then as an entrepreneur in residence at Menlo Ventures, which I think is how Alma came to be. I'd love to speak a bit more about that. By training, he's an engineer. By passion, I think he's a lifelong athlete. Um, Ram and I have spent time together. We've traveled together around the world. We've spent time in the Middle East together. I think we might have even run together once too. I remember that.
Mhm.
So Rami, this has been a long time coming, but welcome to Lifts.
Yeah, thank you guys. It's a pleasure to be here.
I'm excited to go through a bit of your history. Particularly, I wanted to get some time to understand about Push, which I know you've moved on from, but I think that's a fascinating topic. Certainly one that's sort of fairly close to my heart. But as I was looking into you a little bit, I normally pull up people's LinkedIn profile, and I saw this motto which was on there, which was energy and persistence conquer all things. A Benjamin Franklin quote, which I thought was really nice. And I was just curious, as a bit of an opener, but tell me a little bit about how that's guided you in what you've done from the sort of startup days with Push and now into to launching Alma.
Yeah, I definitely a quote that I remember the first time I read it. I was reading Walter Isaacson's biography of Ben Franklin, and it was really incredible. It was just like hooked me right away to read that line. And the thing that stood out to me about it is it really represents, I think, one of my few good traits that I really hold on dear to, which is persistence. I think at the end of the day, people think sometimes that as an entrepreneur, as a founder, you're going to be right all the time and you need to be right all the time. The reality is you're making countless number of mistakes, probably on a daily basis, right? But the key is to just be persistent, to stick through it, stick through the tough times, and just kind of keep hammering. That's one of probably the biggest takeaways I took from my initially 5 years at University of Waterloo studying engineering, one of the toughest programs in the country. And something I took on to my first startup Push, and I continue to kind of bring to the table every day at Alma. So it's a really good line for anybody who's looking to start a business. I think.
Just on that one, I was reading the Elon Musk book recently, and one of the things that he said, which was quite interesting about decision making, is that his whole philosophy is that you just make decisions quickly, you don't hold them back, and he almost admitted that many of the decisions that he was going to make are wrong, but the goal is to move forward, make decisions, and then very quickly correct. So just interesting in your thoughts about decision making, because you're right. When you're a leader, you almost sort of have this thought about yourself that you need to spend time on making the right decision, and probably put more time into it than probably what's helpful. Have you sort of been able to find the confidence in yourself in being able to move ahead using that type of philosophy?
Yeah, it's honestly like I think my decision making philosophy at a startup is inspired by a couple of different quotes. One of them is obviously energy persistent. Just be persistent, stay the course, push as hard as you can, even if things are not going your way. Another really clever line by Jeff Bezos is this concept that he applied at Amazon. It was this concept of reversible versus irreversible decisions. Basically, really quickly triaging with an instance of, is this decision that we're trying to kind of come to a conclusion on, is this something that we can easily reverse? And if so, let's just stop wasting time, take the fork in the road and just go. If it's something that you think is truly irreversible, could have long-term consequences, could be complex to untangle, take a little bit of time and actually invest the proper amount of time to actually decide. So that's something that I really live by, is just quickly triage. Is this something that I can quickly back out of? In that case, just go. Otherwise, cut and run, or take the time and actually invest.
Take us back to what inspired Push in the beginning. I mean, you were, I think, way ahead of your time. Not only is strength all the rage and really has been all the rage, especially post pandemic, connected strength has gotten the interest of a lot of people. There are probably 10 companies that I can kind of who've tried to emulate the success of Push and kind of what you were trying to do. But speak a bit about, and I think there's a lot of different ways people are doing that. They're doing that with devices like what you've tried. Companies are leveraging AI cameras today to try to quantify strength. Matthew and I have kind of geeked out about calling strength and the free weight area in particular as one of the last white spaces of quantifying when you look at a gym environment, much easier to do at home or in a professional, more
Mhm.
controlled setting. What inspired you to um, found Push and start the company?
So I'm a tech geek at heart, right? Let's just start there. Mo, you and I have bonded about this all the time,
Yeah.
right? Like we geek out about Bluetooth specs.
Yeah.
That's when you know you're a geek, right? It was like Bluetooth specs become a thing you will spend hours talking about. So true geek at heart, but also I've always loved health and wellness as a sector, as a category. It's an area that I've always felt very deeply passionate about on a personal level. I remember coming out of school and looking at some of my friends working at banks, and then some are working at oil, and some went into defense, and I started realizing, like, for me, if I'm going to dedicate my life and career and this knowledge that I built in technology to something, I want to put it to something that's actually of use and benefit to humanity, something that I could truly like feel is having that positive impact. I could wake up every morning, even if I'm getting punched in the face, I'm still actually enjoying doing. And to me, that's an area that I've really felt passionate about. Push started very simply by me wanting to scratch my own itch. I was an absolute gym rat in my early 20s, but I struggled constantly at the gym and figuring out, past those phase of easy gains. So what are you actually supposed to, by how much should you be going up? How do you change your loading day in, day out? And I remember my buddies would be buying programs from people like Mark Ripito and all these like famous strength coaches, telling me about them, and like Chris Duffin and all these guys. And I started realizing that, okay, these are cool programs, but how is this personalized to me? Right. Uh, and I remember having this light bulb moment at one point. I looked at the gym. I still remember I was sitting there, weight platform in front of me. I was just about to do a couple of deadlifts. And I started thinking, I'm like, man, this is just like a giant physics problem. Like, you've got a physical object, right, that weighs a certain amount of weight and you're moving it a specific distance. I'm like, there's got to be a better way to understand what people are doing. So I started geeking out about sports science. I literally went on Scholar, Google.com, started digging into like all the research. What are Olympics teams doing? How are they tracking and measuring? And discovered this whole concept of velocity-based training. Famous coach kind of really popularized it, Dan Baker out of Australia. But it was actively being used with the world's elite organizations, USOC, Canadian Olympic Committees, all these groups were publishing and writing about it. And I couldn't get my hands on this metric. There was just no easy way. There was only one company at the time that was offering. It's called the Tendo unit out of Eastern Europe. And it was like $1,500 for this giant box with a giant ugly screen. And I realized that there is a world where we could take this, we've all got phones in our pocket at the time. We could just put this into a wearable system and actually have it directly use the computer in your pocket. So that's kind of what inspired me to do it. I started building some prototypes nights and weekends, got really some good feedback. I reached out. I still remember emailing like four sports science profs at the University of Toronto, seeing if any of them were willing to take a meeting. Luckily, one of them did. I'm still friends with him to this day, and Dr. Tyson Beach. And he took the time to sit down with me. I showed him this prototype. He kind of gave me a bit of a nudge, but also like pointed me to areas I need to watch out for. And I just kind of kept chasing it after that. So that was kind of like really the start of the journey, to scratch my own itch, find something. Now, going back to what you said, Mo, you're absolutely right. I was definitely too early. I can, I, luckily, I wasn't too early. I remember a mentor of mine told me this line. It still kind of sticks in my head. He said, "There are three phases to startup timing. You can be too early, you can be early, or you can be too late. Those are the options you have." Right? And I remember thinking, at the time I didn't know, but I'm like, I hope to God I'm not too early. And it seems like we just barely made it. I think we were a bit early to the space, but not too early that we couldn't make it. But definitely, definitely, it was a bit of a wild ride navigating all those Bluetooth specs back in the day.
It does seem as though it's still fairly early within that space, and I'm reasonably familiar with some of the technology that's out there. And they're also, when you think about going into a traditional gym, there does seem to be quite a few gaps in terms of being able to track it in the similar way you can if you're cycling or running, as an example. Like, how would you describe where that market is today, and what do you think could come? Like, where would this look like, let's say, in maybe 5 to 10 years, in terms of strength tracking within a traditional fitness environment?
Let me start off by saying I've been living under a bit of a rock for the last year. Just this rock is called Alma. I'm living under it, and I'm just constantly obsessing about nutrition now and AI. So I'm in a bit of a different space. I have been a little bit out of touch for the last, say, year when it comes to strength training technology. But my general impression when it comes to any type of modality like this or any type of new really we're talking about is a radical behavior change, right, for people. Um, I don't want to go way back in history, but let's just focus on like digitization and actually getting data out of anything related to fitness. There's a couple of hurdles we need to cross from a technology standpoint. One is data collection. We need to actually make the data seamless enough to collect. That's step one. And I think Tender Unit started, we took it a step further, we made it 10x better, and others will come along the way. I'm bullish on camera vision based systems at this point. I think in the weight room, they make a ton of sense. You've got now like that additional tier of total seamless data collection, right? That takes you a step in the right direction. I think what we're seeing now, and this is where maybe a little bit of what I'm doing with Alma will be insightful, is the second hurdle that I experienced, and one of the challenges, the reason push ended up being more of a B2B2C model than B2C, is the data interpretation. So, okay, great. Now you've got tons of data on every single rep. You have really good sense of this user's readiness. How do you communicate in a way that's easy, that's actionable, and tap into their psychology and motivations? And this is where large language models and AI and what's happening there could be the true final unlock. So I see two opportunities right now. If I was like to try to take another stab at the strength training space, I would study carefully vision-based models to see if there's room for a 10x improvement in seamless data collection. And then number two, I would start heavily investing in the data interpretation and motivation layer, right? Like LLMs are freaky good at LLMs is large language models, AI, ChatGPT, and so on. They're freaky good at tapping into psychology and really rephrasing raw, ugly CSVs and data into something that could make a ton of sense for an individual. And that's to me like a huge unlock that we just all witnessing in real time.
Before we move to Alma Nutrition, one quick question for you, yeah, because this is where entrepreneurs, a lot of us come to this inflection point. And just like timing, you don't want to be too early, or too late. Selling the company is a big decision. At what point did you know that selling to Whoop or running a process or coming to market was the right decision? I mean, how would you, and what advice would you give entrepreneurs who maybe have started companies and are thinking about exiting? How do you know when it's the right time to go to market?
Honestly, I think it's a unique decision for everybody. It's the motivation of what even gets you to start to think about it is a whole topic in of itself. For what it's worth, with push, my general advice is if you're a founder, you've been at it for some time, you're starting to think about different options for the businesses. Um, if you try to approach everything through the lens of like, I want to sell this business, like it can work in certain ways, but I think it actually ends up leading to subpar outcomes. Like you're better off just creating a number of options for the business and then seeing which one lays. So for us, Whoop and the conversation of acquisition really was born out of me creating a bunch of options for the business. One was we felt pretty convicted. This is right after COVID hit and we were past that first year. uh, we felt like there was a really good chance at building a B2C business now with all the kettlebells that people had at home and all the gym equipment that people were buying. So we felt an opportunity where we had a lot of data. We had some very powerful validated algorithms, a very strong brand. We had 150 pro teams at that point, hundreds of high schools on the platform. We knew that we had a product that's reliable, that's battle tested. We built a B2C facing brand. We called it Push Athlete, and we built a completely separate app when we were going down that road. And I was pitching VCs and testing the market on that side. And at the same time, I wanted to see, okay, is there a path for the business where we can partner and license our algorithms to an existing consumer facing company? And I reached out to Whoop and I reached out to a bunch of companies. The conversation picked up steam with two major players. So I'm not going to disclose the other. But we ended up finding that Whoop just felt like a much stronger, better fit for us. And we were, really, really happy with the outcome and the time that I spent there afterwards and kind of getting
Well,
it
I'm not
all.
sure if you can answer this, but looking back, would you have held
Yeah.
on or sold? Do you think you made the right decision?
I think so. Yeah, I reached this point when I was reflecting on this as the Whoop team came back and kind of proposed an acquisition instead of a licensing deal, and I just started thinking. Like for me personally, I'm a perpetually curious person. It's again one of the few like traits that I like good traits that I hold on to very dearly is I'm constantly trying to figure out how things work, why are certain things the way they are. And I reached a point I would say in my journey after 8 years with Push where I felt like I've capped the learning around the space and the industry for me personally. So I kind of reached a point where I felt like, okay, I really wanted a fresh new challenge, doing something, same domain, but just a different problem set that I could kind of sink my teeth into and like just restart that early phase of like learning and integration. So that's part of the reason I was really excited about it. And part of the reason Whoop was super exciting is I didn't go into it thinking, I went into it thinking like, okay, there's a wealth of problems and learnings for me as well that I can get out of this experience, right? These guys know a ton about sleep. They have huge data sets to play with and understand, a huge consumer base. It could open up my eyes to like things that people really care about in the consumer space. After spending 8 years obsessing about what do strength coaches and sports scientists care about fundamentally, right?
When you moved on to Alma, I was just curious to get your thought process and if you created any framework in terms of that decision making, because now this is your second opportunity, and clearly you must have learned a lot about what to do, what not to do, what type of opportunity made sense, how you choose the opportunity, how you get started the opportunity. So how you get started on a new opportunity. So what were some of the things that were really important before you started another venture, and give us a bit of an overview of what a couple of those initial steps were to move it forward, because I think a lot of people, whether that's changing their career, starting up a new business, or leaving another one, I think these are really critical moments in what you do, and you can quite easily make the wrong decision. And so just curious to understand, what did that look like for you, Rami?
Yeah, so I didn't after wrapping up my time at Whoop, leaving on great terms with the team and Will. I wanted to take some time to really advise my initial plan. And Mo, at the time, you and I were exploring. I was kind of looking at the potential of going to the Middle East, spending some time in Dubai, where I grew up originally, thinking about opportunities in different parts of the world, understanding the problems that people are dealing with. I was advising a couple of startups at the time, and I started doing that for roughly about 6 months. Just a handful of hours a week type thing. Really, just mostly trying to de-stress and deload after 8 years of startups. Um, and I realized very quickly that like this wave of AI is just too big not to ride. I was constantly finding myself drawn back on my laptop, staying up till like midnight, 1 a.m. My wife was like, "What are you doing?" I thought, "This is your time off," and I'm just tinkering, playing with the APIs, trying to figure out where they fail, what's happening, watching webinars, attending virtual meetups, going to meetups in real life to try to understand like what are people talking about in this industry and this new wave. So I felt a couple of things happen at the same time. So I felt this pull back into this new wave, this new technology modality that could unlock a lot of really exciting things. Number two, I was searching for problems in the health and wellness space, and my initial instinct was actually to try to build a med device, like a health tech product. So I went, and I'm happy, and I could talk your ear off about this, but for maybe for another time. But I spent a bunch of time digging into cortisol sensors, like stuff in the lab, like not things that are actually out commercially. But I started looking lab by lab across the US and Canada and Europe to see what are the new sensor platforms that I could potentially build a cortisol measurement device off of, or what are different ways for us to track new biomarkers non-invasively. I almost worked back from like, if you got a wearable, what kind of new sensors do you want to put in? How can you solve problems for people using it? But I realized pretty quickly that all the low hanging fruit has been picked. And at this point, anything you do is going to be a full on regulated med tech device. And I just didn't really want to go down that road. I spoke to a bunch of health tech founders and realized you spend half your time dealing with the FDA, and that's not something I'm particularly excited about. So I ended up thinking, okay, what are other problems in the space? And I was the best way to learn new technology is to actually try to build with it. So I was building a bunch of prototypes across a bunch of different ideas that I had. And one that came to me was just nutrition tracking. I've used MyFitnessPal and Lose It and Chronometer for years. So I'm very familiar with this space. And I really wanted to see what would it look like if I was to reinvent that whole experience and build something from scratch with LLMs at the heart of it. And I built a couple of prototypes that were actually fun. I shared them with a couple of friends. I remember one of them was staying over. Next morning, I wake up, he's talking to the prototype and tracking his breakfast. I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. Like, interesting to see his behavior. And I realized that there might be something here that's worth pursuing. This is around the same time I connected with the Menlo Ventures team. So I had an initial, just a friendly chat, connected with the partner there, Sean Caroline. Is a great VC. And I was just chatting with him about what I'm up to, gave him the update. And as soon as I said that, his eyes lit up. And he said, this is something that we've been thinking a lot about ourselves. We've actually been doing this research as part of our labs, which is our kind of internal incubator system within the firm. So we sat down, we spent a bunch of time on it, and that's kind of how the whole EIR thing happened. And I kind of jumped back in. But to answer your question, I think it's really, for me, it happened very organically. I didn't feel like I was trying to force it. Definitely, there was a couple of like gut check moments throughout the period to see, is this something I want to pursue? So for me, what's really important is if I wake up in the morning, 5 years in, as I'm getting punched in the face, as you usually are as a founder, am I still going to feel like what I'm doing is worthwhile? And is this something that I'm actually like excited, feels like it's having an impact in the world? For me, especially after visiting the Middle East, Mo,
Yeah.
when you and I went to Dubai and Saudi Arabia, I was looking at macro stats for the region. Saudi Arabia has 60% obesity rate.
It's even
Egypt
higher
has a
now. Yeah.
70%. It's even higher now. I was speaking to healthcare officials there, and they're genuinely concerned about how do we solve this problem. Like diet and nutrition is a huge problem. I think sometimes when we're in the space, we feel like, oh, it's all figured out. People know how to eat well. Eating well is super hard for vast majority of people. Even for me, for most people, it's challenging. What do you eat every day? What do you eat on the road? How do you feel properly? Something feels off. Why? Like all these questions are constantly coming up. So it's a big problem. I knew I could sink my teeth into for a decade plus and still learn and have a positive impact on the world. And then the second question is why now? That's a really important question to ask. I think the most astute VCs will always ask you that question first. Why now? And for me, the answer is very simple. Like I built a prototype. I could see that LLMs are a step level change. And I knew what was going to happen. A lot of our existing incumbents in the space are going to try to slap lipstick on a pig and just put LLMs on top of their existing product stack. And I knew that if you build from scratch with an AI first experience, really rethink the entire experience through the lens of AI, you could build a 10x better product, and you could build a product that unlocks things that you didn't even know were possible yet. And this is exactly what's happened over the last 10 months.
Well, I think when you look at the difference between push and nutrition, obviously is actually a pretty saturated market. Been around for some time. Unlike when you created push, that was something that wasn't really here. But I do think that it
Mhm,
is also one that is really underserved. And
mhm,
I've got some interesting kind of data points here, but I want to just share a bit about, something that like how important nutrition is for me. If a lot of us in the industry, into fitness, we have made nutrition a lifestyle. For me, I remember, just like you, I grew up in Dubai, right? We
yeah,
both share that. together. And I remember reading Optimum Sports Nutrition in '93. This is when I came to the US. I was 13 years old. You and I talked about this, and it taught me the fundamentals of macro and micronutrition. And these are concepts that most people, n- definitely not at 13, really get a real foundation in. That book shaped how I thought about fueling more for performance rather than just fueling like a need of being full. And that lesson's really stuck with me because even today, I'm 45, and why nutrition worked, and I think nutrition works because it becomes a lifestyle, not something that you're thinking about all the time. It's got to be frictionless and seamless. So here's the challenge: most people today, number one, they don't have the foundation of what to eat. They don't understand macro, micro nutrients. The numbers tell the story. So over 90% of adults say that they want to eat healthier, but fewer than 15% actually track what they eat consistently. And even big tools like MyFitnessPal, and I know the team there, and I love kind of what they're trying to do now. MyFitnessPal has had more than 200 million downloads, right? One of the most popular health and fitness apps. Yet 70 to 80% of those users drop off within 2 weeks. Why?
Mhm.
Because logging is just annoying and super tedious,
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
And then
Mhm.
like the cost of getting it wrong is huge, right? So you talked about Rami, the issues of countries like Saudi Arabia, but even here in the US. So the question is, and I think this is what Alma's trying to solve, and what got me excited about what you're doing at Alma is that, how do we take nutrition from being a chore to a lifestyle companion? That's really what you're trying to do. And to me, you're leveraging AI. You saw AI. This it's this potential of transforming everything we know about nutrition tracking. And I want to kind of unpack that a little bit. But to me, it's voice, it's text, it's photos, it's getting rid of the friction that has been
Mhm.
associated with tracking. So instead of, scanning and typing and doing all those things, you're just like naturally talking about, here's what I ate. Maybe right now I'm drinking a Celsius. I probably should not be promoting that. Um, but more importantly, you're leveraging AI to find patterns. So I am, really excited about what you're doing here because again, it's a mature space. There's a
Mhm.
lot of options out there, but it's really leveraging the timing of it, right? The timing of
Yeah.
launching this particular product with the evolution and maturation of technologies that are available. That's why, I think you've got an opportunity here to succeed where I don't want to use the term others have failed because you can't say my fitness pal has failed, but
Mhm.
I think you could solve that retention problem that nutrition apps have really struggled to keep up with.
Yeah, for what it's worth, like Mo, you hit the nail on the head on so many different aspects here. I think just to unpack some of it, I think the biggest part is I don't perceive my fitness pal as our number one competitor. I actually think of ChatGPT as our number one competitor. Um, so just so you kind of have a lens of how we perceive things within Alma is like we want to be the interface where food decisions are made. So we want to be the tool that's there for you, and you trust Alma to help you figure out what you're eating day in, day out, week in, week out, wherever you may be. Right. As your life changes, as your body changes, your requirements change. Alma's constantly adapting for it, and that's something that we think, and I strongly believe, is a place where if you go super deep, you can build a 10x product then better than ChatGPT. Right now, ChatGPT is a bit of a catch-all. There's actually a recent consumer survey that showed that I believe 20 to 30% of users, sorry, in the top five, uh, the queries are most common queries. Food was actually one of them, right? So it's like email automation is number one. Two is basic questions and inquiries, but then there's like a bit of a kind of a bucket of different queries, and the top five in that list, food was in the top five. And the reason for that is because people are asking ChatGPT always like, what should I eat today, or what's the best what are the macros on this, or what are the calories on that, or how should I meal prep, or I have this recipe, how do I change it to make it gluten free or adjust it to my diet? And our belief is that if you take the sum total of these questions and you combine it with a dead simple food tracking experience, right? That's like super intuitive, super easy, voice first. You end up with a much richer context on what the person is doing. You're able to give a much higher quality answers. And then because ChatGPT is having to serve all your needs across all these domains, they're going to have a really hard time building a great experience that knows when to reach out to you proactively to help you stay clear across so many different facets of your life. Our bet is if you go super deep into nutrition, you can create an experience where people Alma will automatically ping you after a workout and tell you, "Great job on that. Here's a couple of ways you can fuel." After a day maybe where you overdid it, or at lunch, you track your lunch. It's like now you're a little bit over certain macros, under certain macros. It can automatically recommend a couple of different options for you for dinner. Those are the kinds of things that we're trying to solve at Alma versus just tracking. For us, tracking is a means to an end. Because with tracking, we get two really super valuable things that Alma can help you with and benefit from. One is obviously get a better sense of like your macro splits and your general broad micronutrient intake. We've partnered with research grade database, by the way, on micronutrients, University of Minnesota's database. So we don't only look at macros, we look at everything from potassium to magnesium to you name it. We've got over 175 micronutrients we track about what you're eating. But then beyond that, we also look at your flavor profile. So if we start to see that you really like fish, Alma is going to be smart enough to recommend fish-based dishes for you versus recommending generic things. And this is where we see the differences between us and some of the other competitors out there.
As you were talking, I was thinking, I've got Aura, and Mo
Yeah.
mentioned. I think there's some sort of meal thing in there, which Mo's told me is pretty good. But for me, just clicking on it, even though it's pretty simple, you just take a picture. I've just not really got into that for whatever reason. Although the sleep side of it, I'm obsessive. I just
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
sort of leave my life about it. So I guess the first thing is, or first part of the question to you is how do you see that with many other apps that are out in the market, or do you see that this is like one of the apps that goes on everybody's home screen, that is the new ChatGPT, for example, that doesn't yet exist, which is probably why I can't imagine a standalone in a way that possibly you can. And then secondly, one of the things that I spend a lot of time doing is following different influencers and podcasts and research about almost like supplementation to nutrition. So things you can take to help you for sleep, recovery, pre-workout, post-workout, all of the things that you can use where you may have some sort of shortfall in your diet from supplementation. And I was just curious, how far beyond just nutrition do you go in terms of providing people with that advice of other things that may be relevant to them?
Yeah, those are great questions. All right, let's start with the first one. I think when it comes to the question around ChatGPT, there's a couple of things here going on, right? Tracking, in my opinion, it's already is largely commoditized. Like I do think we have a superior product where we really pull ahead, in my opinion, versus the competition is on voice logging. So our system is super flexible. You could literally pop Alma open and just say, for lunch I had this, and for dinner I had this, and I had 100 grams of this, and I had a handful of that, and Alma's going to be able to perfectly navigate those questions. I stress test it all the time. I'm a busy guy. I'll often track my whole day just before dinner or right after. So I'm putting in 30 to 40 things in under 5 seconds in one sentence. And it works beautifully. Like, if, I feel, really blessed to be able to use it every day for that. So that's that aspect of it. I think in terms of where I see us kind of competing with potentially wearable companies that are trying to get into this space. I'm an Aura user personally. I think Aura is great. I think the biggest thing I've learned in consumer is that it's very hard to get known for something, let alone to get known for many many things. Whoop is a great company. Phenomenal set of features. They continue to add features and enhance it and add value to their users. But if you were to probably pull 5 users out there right now, they're a phenomenal sleep tracker, right? Uh, Same deal with Aura, Matthew. Like, it sounds like that's your exact experience. That's my exact experience, right? Like, it's very hard once you get to know for something to be able to truly extend your brand and show that you can get beyond it. With Aura, it seems they're also very focused on. For now, they did acquire glucose tracking. They seem to have some interest in diet beyond it, but they are very focused, even when it comes to nutrition, to tie it back to your sleep cycles, right? For us, we're going beyond that. But I think the ultimate differentiator is where we are very focused versus where they're going. Is tracking for us is not where it stops. It's really about bridging the gap. So our users and the feature requests we get from our users right now is like, can Alma, I've been asking Alma for like meal ideas, but it'd be really cool if it could like recommend a restaurant for me to go to, right? Or like, we have users that take photos of menus at restaurants and then ask, what should I order from this menu to help me hit my macros?
Mhm.
That's where we're going. So that's our focus is much more around like food decision making and making it for people who care about health. That's simple and super easy. That's really our focus versus what. Around the question of ChatGPT, listen, like I think Sam has been very public about him wanting to effectively dominate the entire space. I think he said in an interview a few months ago where he said the platonic ideal is one AI for every user. I have a hunch he thinks it's going to be ChatGPT. I think it's too early in the cycle to really know how it's going to play out. But the bet that we're taking, the bet of many other consumer AI companies are taking, is that you'll actually see a bit of an unbundling, and you'll see different companies go super deep into one domain and then own it and build a superior product. But ultimately, it's going to be the consumer that decides how this plays out.
Yeah, it's almost like this idea of a super app or a single app or I mean, it's been tried before. Whether you're looking at Chromebooks, netbooks from back in the day, to even communication apps, it's hard and it just hasn't worked because it's really hard, especially as we get so personalized, to be so fluent in all the different disciplines. And look, so part of the things of what we do in List is we cover a couple of news stories that are relevant to the week. And one of the ones that we've been tracking quite a bit on here, and we've talked about Aura on this podcast, is the Aura patent lawsuit with Ultrahuman, Rincon, and potentially even Samsung at some point. Aura got a really big win recently
Hmm.
in that coming up in October, which is roughly just over a month away from when this ban comes into place, Ultrahuman and Rincon may no longer sell their products in the US. That is just absolutely a massive win for Aura. And related to that, Ultrahuman countersued Aura in India to try to ban Aura from coming in. And the India High Court threw out that case and dismissed that case. So now Aura would be able to be sold in India. And there's so much here. We are all wearing Aura rings right now. I've got nothing against Ultrahuman. I saw another ring over the weekend called Luna. I mean, I think Matthew, you sent me the Bond ring a few weeks ago. There's so many different ring companies that are out here, and I think competition generally is a good thing, but obviously you've got to protect patents and you can't infringe that and all of that. But would love to get just Rami your thoughts in IP and kind of what's going on with this whole Aura case. And Matthew, we are going to get Mohit from Ultrahuman on this podcast. He did commit to come on to talking about what they're going through.
Fantastic. Can't wait to listen to that one. That's going to be really fun. Um, uh, yeah, listen, my perspective in general on patents, and this is from a guy who ran a hardware business, is that if you're spending your time suing and chasing companies that are infringing on these patents, you've got yourself in a position where you probably should reflect more on how to innovate rather than to chase patent litigation. This might be a harsh opinion to share, and I'm saying this as I'm wearing an Aura ring.
I would agree
Uh,
with that. Yeah.
but I just personally I think it's a fool's errand in the long term to try to quash competition based on the fact that you innovated on a great form factor. That's a winning form factor. There's a reason I'm wearing an Aura right now. Uh, I think you're better off spending that time and resources on thinking about how do you extend your product's reach, how do you continue to push the form factor even further and further, rather than trying to just whack-a-mole competitors. Like we live in an age now where if I wanted to, I could spend the next 6 months and spin up a ring company and have supplies in Canada soon. Are you going to sue me in Canada? It's not a sustainable long-term strategy, I think, for the business. Like I feel for them. It's probably quite frustrating to see, especially companies like Samsung, come in and copy the exact form factor. But I think it's just a reality of hardware businesses. Like you just have to pull ahead in other ways. And personally, I think It's that Aura doesn't really, in my opinion, do good enough job of communicating this. But I could tell you, as somebody who built a hardware company, like the hardware is hard, but ultimately, like the hardest part of building Push was getting the data and building really robust algorithms that can adapt to everything. And one of the most impressive things about Whoop is this constant 24/7 collection of heart rate data. They have a massive data set, right? And they continue to push the boundaries in refining that algorithm. And I think this is where I would spend a lot more time highlighting the differentiation versus companies like Ultrahuman and Samsung. So that's kind of my personal take. Is I personally don't think this is like a great news for the ecosystem or for Aura directly. Uh, I think they're better off putting their resources and time into continuing to build great products.
I was curious to get your thoughts on a topic that we talked about before we press record, which I guess is sort of branding, positioning, and I'll call it an obsession, but just reconnecting with the younger demographic. And as someone who's built a successful brand and now looking to really dominate search when it comes to nutrition. I was just curious to get your thoughts. Like maybe you could sort of share this branding story with Nike, who we started talking about in relation to their Shoe Dog book that you're resting your laptop on. but just curious to see, how when you're developing this new product, how much thought are you putting into the demographic and how you communicate that, and are you seeing a really big difference when it comes to the way the needs of sort of different populations where you're having to sort of adopt some of the things that we're seeing from Nike here. I know it's a big question. There's a number of things in it, but just curious to get your thoughts on Nike and how that relates to really what you're doing as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, isn't it amazing that this started by admiring how great Shoe Dog is as a book, right? This whole thing started was just both of us being like, yes, we love this book. It's a great book and it's a great story, and we're both clearly like huge Nike fans. And then the reality is, I kind of, I'm just looking at my own as an individual, like my own shopping behavior. I'm very much an 90s kid. Like I grew up admiring Michael Jordan, all this like the swoosh, just do it, and all this incredible wealth of a brand that I've been inspired by. And I look at my own shopping behavior and like my running shoes, my gear, it's just constantly shifting away. I find myself shifting away from this brand that I've loved for a really long time. And it's a little bit heartbreaking. It's a little bit sad, to be honest. And then I mentioned this campaign that just popped up like 2 weeks ago. Why do it? And yeah, I don't know. It doesn't really. It's not hitting the same tone. It seems like the three of us are definitely in alignment there. So
Yeah,
it's a bit of a shame. Yeah.
I would say just do it has been around for almost 4 decades, and it wasn't just an advertising tagline. It really broke the sphere of it being, a cultural meme that meant like ambition to me. Like great. I mean, I used to have a Just Do It poster in my dorm room, right? It's
Yeah.
arguably, I would say, one of the most successful pieces of branding in history. Now they want to replace it with this "Why Do It" to resonate with a generation that's dealing with anxiety and the fear of failure and all this stuff. And I just look. I'm not saying that anxiety isn't real, and we're dealing with more of that now than ever before. I want to just be clear about that. But I think the issue with Nike is that they're dealing with a lot of issues right now,
Yeah.
and they're trying to find the sources of the issues. The problem, to me at least, is that the tagline isn't broken. Nike's challenges today don't really stem from a marketing issue. It stems from the marketplace. And that's the difference. I mean, you mentioned it, Rami. The reality is that their biggest headwinds are product and competition. You think
Hmm.
about brands, like we're both runners, all three of us are runners. Brands like On and Hoka,
Okay.
Lululemon, and Viore. I saw an Archie Manning ad for Viore and over the weekend. They're winning the market share because they're building better performance products. They're creating better community experiences. They're meeting
Hmm.
customers with innovation. Nike has
Hmm.
not been keeping up. How many
Hmm.
Nike run clubs do you know? Right? They try to do
Hmm.
studios and boutique studios, but that was like 10 years ago. So
Yeah.
this change is something. Will that fix it? Probably not. I think if
Hmm.
anything, it risks like um diluting their brand's strongest
Mhm,
equity, which is the swoosh, which is just do it.
mhm,
So
mhm.
look, they've created lightning in a bottle from a cultural perspective. I would, to your point, double down on innovation, double down on an athlete first product, and
Mhm.
don't tinker with things that have worked so well for you.
So a huge part of the reason we love the High Rocks team and we kind of embrace this partnership is because of the fact that I think the real bet to take as a brand is not to why do it, is to actually to really go offline. Find your offline communities. I actually think we're going to see this is one of the things that I have a higher conviction on over the next few years when it comes to brand building is that do less online, do more in real life. Reality is, I think the internet is going to go through this very challenging period over the next few years where it's going to be very hard to tell what's real from what's not, right? And guess what happens when people are questioning every single thing they see in front of them that's being served? They're going to start to dismiss all of it. When they dismiss all of it, they're going to revert back to offline. And I think that's actually a great solution for mental health issues. I think stress and anxiety. A huge part
Absolutely.
of why people are feeling anxious is because you're sitting 3 hours online on Instagram or whatever platform, and you're just constantly getting hammered with either aggravating news, polarizing news, or status, depreciating kind of messages that just make you feel like shit about yourself. And when you go out there, go for a run, meet a couple of friends, go to play a board game, do whatever you want to, hang out in the park, you're gonna feel that much better. Like it's not gonna solve everything, but I do firmly believe that. So going back to what you're saying, Mo, I think like in-person run clubs would be a huge, great bet for Nike, and they had such a great foundation there.
Yeah, that's right.
And
Yeah.
I don't know what happened to it. At this point, it's like that doesn't exist anymore. All I see is Lulu run clubs in
Mhm.
Canada and On in New York and so on.
Aloe has run clubs now
Al
too. Yeah.
Alum, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I'm curious actually, what do you guys think of their studios? Didn't they I remember a year and a half ago they made a big announcement about opening up strength gyms and like gyms and
They still have them.
Canada.
I've been to a couple of them, but I
Yeah,
went
I haven't
really
been.
early on, so I think it's unfair to state how they're doing, and I think they were supposed to grow. I don't think they've grown like they wanted to grow, but I think that
Mhm,
was one of their attempts to creating community, and from what I hear, largely it's worked. It's worked well. Um,
mhm.
Look, so one things we like to wrap up with lifts is our key takeaways. So Matthew, I'd love to maybe start with you on what's your key takeaway from this episode?
We really have covered a lot of ground this week. So there are a lot of lessons, and it's great to speak to someone like yourself, Rami, because you do. I've been making a number of notes of things I'm going to go away and think about. But I think probably the one that stuck with me most is your last statement about the in person as opposed to technology, and it sort of got me thinking about one of the reports that Mo and I were exchanging over text, and a future potential guests that we've got coming on is if you look at what's happening with alcohol and how Gen Z, probably the first generation that have really bucked the trend in terms of their habits around alcohol, and it's significant. And I'd love to, hopefully, at some point, we'll be able to sort of understand that a little bit more of what's causing it. But they've really changed the habits and the places they go because of this shift in not drinking alcohol. And similar to what you said about technology, I just wonder whether there'll become a time where the younger people really recognize the harm that technology can sort of give to people from a mental health perspective. And I'm not taking away a lot of the benefits that technology has given to all of us in our lives as a result of what some of the advances. But there's definitely some caution, and I think for younger people that have been brought up, and even having two teenage kids, and extremely concerned for them about what it can do to them. I just wonder whether when these when this age group gets into sort of late teens, they'll become aware of some of the science that's around at that point, and there will almost be this anti-phone, anti-technology, where people will go back to basics, and then it's sort of figuring out, how clearly technology will play a part in their lives, but my view is it will be a little bit more balanced, and it will be sort of some of the older people that are hooked on it, and the younger ones that have seen the light, and they don't drink, they're not addicted to their phones, and yeah, so that's probably my takeaway. Mo, well, actually, Rami, I'd probably put that one to you. What have you? What are your takeaways?
What are my takeaways? I Honestly, you guys kind of like took me down memory lane. I have to say, I haven't thought about push in some time. Um, and I think one of my probably my takeaways is to probably write more of some of these journeys and philosophies, and just generally anchor them a little bit more. I feel like I retain them in my head, but I don't really communicate them to the team enough. I don't think I actually document any of what I've gone through in a way that I think could potentially be shared. So that's definitely inspiring me to write a couple of blogs on my blog post here about some of these journeys that we went through. Then yeah, maybe check out what's going on with Bluetooth. Actually, that's another takeaway.
Yeah,
I want to see it. What are we at now? Bluetooth 6 or 7? I haven't even seen. Like I'm
up
a
there.
software guy now.
We're getting up there. We're getting up there.
There you go. Nice.
Well, I think to me, it's I started my career in product. I still feel like I'm in product, and it was just us talking, listening to Rami and his innovation from Push and now Alma and AI, and then even hearing that like that Nike change in slogan. To me, it's clear that slogans don't save companies, products do, and until
Mhm,
Nike and others really gets back to leading innovation, there's no three-phase line, no matter how clever it is, that will solve your competitive struggles. And I think, you've
mhm,
always got to be product first, right? Don't look for that quick fix or that quick win. If you don't have a good product, people, especially in this market today where it's so easy to go into Perplexity or ChatGPT and do competitive analysis, people are doing competitive analysis and deep research
mhm,
for $100 item that they're going to buy. Like
mhm,
literally, right? So people
mhm,
are doing that. So Alma people, I'm sure, are going to be comparing Alma to MyFitnessPal, and
mhm,
ultimately product, I think, has never mattered as much before in the age of AI. So my key
mhm,
takeaway is anyone wanting to get into product as a career, do it.
mhm.
Really get deep into it because I still think that product's going to win.
I love that. Always product first.
Well, that's it for this week's episode. Rami, thank you again for joining us today. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. If you have, then please give us a like, subscribe to our channel, and share it with a few people so we can keep these interviews coming. Thanks again for listening.